And then if there's like any like questions in the chat, like I'll let you know. And I think we can hear them too. So
Sounds good. Yeah, just let me know, because obviously it'll be behind me, so I can't see. I'm assuming they can hear us, like.
Yes, the mic's on.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Agustin Peña. I'm a San Diego County Deputy DA. I've been with the DA's office since about 2010 at this point. I'm currently assigned to the Major Narcotics Unit, where I investigate, prosecute any offenses involving the sale, transportation, cultivation of narcotics, including the sale and transportation and transfer of firearms illegally. We work in this unit with state, local, city, and federal agencies in our investigations. And I'll get a little bit to what my day-to-day looks like, but before I get there, I want to talk a little bit about my background, kind of what my path was to the DA's office, and kind of what some of my life circumstances were. So you can't tell right now because I'm wearing a suit, a little sweater today because it's chilly. But I grew up in City Heights, and City Heights is about 5-10 minutes east of here. It's East San Diego. Back in the 90s and 80s, it was less than ideal to grow up in those circumstances. You know, I didn't grow up with any role models or examples of any sort of professional careers, let alone judges or attorneys. And you know, I made some very negative, some bad decisions along the way. And eventually I just started to kind of see the consequences, not necessarily in my own life, but in the life of my friends and everybody else around me, and kind of what those decisions were leading up to. I mean, to this day, I literally have friends who never came out of the criminal justice system, who are to this day hooked on heroin, in and out of prison, in and out of jail. And I saw the writing on the wall at 18, 19 years old, 20 years old. So about that age, I started to make different choices, hang out with different people, and really be more positive in my outlook on life. Actually came here to San Diego State. I graduated in 2009. And after San Diego State, I attended California Western School of Law, where I understand you all are going to be visiting sometime soon for a tour. Went to law school for 3 years, graduated, joined the DA's office, and I never left. I actually started in the DA's office as an intern when I was in law school. So it's one of the things that I want to talk to you a little bit about is going to be internships. Internships are very important. They are very critical, in my opinion. If you happen to land one, they do go a long way. Can you obtain a career? Can you get a job after law school without an internship? You can, but you'll notice, realize quickly that the study and the practice of law is about statistics. It's a big competition, and really it's about how can you stand out from the competition from your peers. And an internship is one of those ways. Good grades, academics, that's another one of those ways. Can you, again, get a job without an internship or an externship? You can. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult. But we'll talk about how to navigate that in a little bit. So joined the DA's office, and I've been with the DA's office ever since. I've been in the general felony unit, prosecuting all different kinds of felonies, from grand theft, robberies, assaults, homicides, sexual assault cases, family protection division, prosecuting elder abuse and domestic violence cases, and now again, major narcotics, where I prosecute anything involving the sale and transportation of narcotics. Not all of them, just specific cases involving kind of unique investigations, put it that way. So a little bit about my path to law school. I really did not consider being an attorney until I had a conversation with a mentor at that time, who I was kind of at a juncture, again, 19 years old, 19, 20 years old. And I had confided in this person that I wanted to go into some sort of legal study. And I tell this person, I'm considering maybe becoming a paralegal. I like the idea of working with the law is interesting. You learn a lot. You can help the community in many different ways. And this person's response is probably one of the most singular, impactful responses that I've gotten in a conversation. And that response was, well, why not just be a lawyer? right? It's very simple, basic, nonchalant kind of a response, but again, putting yourself in my shoes, somebody from the neighborhood, that was an epiphany. That was a moment where I realized, huh, I guess you're right. Why not go all the way? Why not keep pushing my education further? Nothing against becoming a paralegal, that's totally fine. But again, I was limiting myself because of my surroundings and where I grew up. So applied to different schools up and down the state. I always knew that I wanted to attend or practice here in San Diego. So I focused my energy and my efforts at the schools here in San Diego. Got into Cal Western and completed a few internships while I was there. Your first year, there's a saying, by the way, before I talk about my first year that you might already know, but they say that the first year, they scare you to death. Your second year, they work you to death, and your third year, they bore you to death. That is very, very accurate. Because your first year, you are learning how to learn the law, right? There's this kind of extra layer of academic acquisition that you have to get through because it's very dissimilar from your undergrad. So you have to learn how to learn the law or learn how you learn the law, which is very different from other people. And then once you learn how to learn the law, how to study the law, then how do you apply it? How do you use it? How do you write an essay? And much unlike maybe undergrad courses, your final grade in most cases is determined by one final examination. It might seem daunting, it might seem like it's a little intimidating, but it's not all that bad. Some courses do offer midterms, but not many. Most courses are one final and that's it. And obviously participation as well. So that was kind of one thing, one learning curve for me was, okay, how do I learn the law? What's my best approach? And here are some things that I learned about myself that might help you all. There's a lot to be said about studying in shifts. I would study in shifts, blocks for 4 to 6 hours, take a break, and then go back and study another 4 to 6 hours. I saw quickly that my retention and my application of the law and my essays increased exponentially when I would be more strategic about my study. My first semester, I would study, kid you not, Thanksgiving break was the week before finals, I think. The week before finals, and I studied, I think, about 8 hours, 10 hours straight every single day. I was burnt out by the end of that week. So I learned quickly that doesn't work for me. I had to break it up in shifts. Number two, you're going to get a lot of advice. You're going to get a lot of feedback from 2Ls, upper class people, 3Ls, and maybe even some younger attorneys. It's all subjective. It really is all subjective. And it is important that you really know yourself better to understand what is going to work for you and take away what you can and disregard the rest. And I say that because it's also very true for the practice of law. It is also very subjective. The law is very gray, and it's going to be very fact specific, the outcome of a case, very judge specific, right? Two judges can see the same case and they might decide it completely differently. So all this is to say is be comfortable with the ambiguity, be comfortable with the gray area, because you're going to confront it a lot if you decide to pursue this career. And the bar exam. The bar exam is also very gray, in my opinion. It is also very subjective. And for whatever it's worth, the bar exam, in my opinion, is more of a measure of your emotional regulation than your academic prowess or your academic performance or your intelligence. Why do I say that? Because I've seen both extremes. Mind you, I took the bar in 2012 when it was 3 days. And I've known people throughout these past 11 years who have passed and failed the bar. Some of my observations are the following. I've known people in the top 10, 15% of their class who have failed the bar. I've known people who are in the bottom of the class who have passed the bar the first time. And my own experience in observing people on the day of the examination is one of the key underlying factors that I've known consistently is how well or unwell do they regulate their stress, their emotions. That's a big thing. That's a very, very, very big factor. understand that about yourself. Not only how you study, how you acquire information, but how do you release that stress? What healthy outlet do you have? Because if you are a nervous ball of stress on game day, you're not going to perform that great. I won't get into study habits for the bar exam. I think that's a conversation to have later in the future. But those are some observations that I've noticed, that I've picked up, that I think are very, very important to let you all know and cue you in on at this point, to start becoming adept to them and comfortable with those ideas if you decide to pursue law school. Internships in law school. Again, internships are really, really helpful. A lot of people know what they want to do in law school or before law school. Some people don't, and it's okay. I had an idea. I was open to other things, and I tried different internships. I interned at the Legal Aid Society, where I worked with domestic violence victims on getting restraining orders and responding to unlawful detainers. I worked in an asylum clinic, working with asylum victims and unaccompanied minors. And I worked in the DA's office as well. I even actually applied to be an intern with the public defender's office. For reasons unknown to me up to today's date, I have no idea, but they declined to take me on. So I was open to that, is my point, is I was open to different experiences, even if it was on the opposite side of the office that I'm on now. I think employers appreciate that. At least my office does. If you're well-rounded, if you are exposing yourself to other bodies of law. One quick tip, if you're kind of one of those where you're bouncing around from different fields to different areas and not sure of where you ultimately want to practice, is let's say you do that, you bounce around from different internships and you finally realize, okay, I want to be a public defender, or I want to be a corporate attorney. I want to do business litigation or immigration law. One of the key factors that we look at as employers is, how does your experience in all these other internships that seem unrelated, how do they make you a better corporate attorney? How do they make you a better immigration lawyer? For instance, if you intern with the DA's office and you want to be an immigration lawyer, there's a lot of overlap between criminal law and immigration law, right? Folks who have either no immigration status or some temporary immigration status also commit crimes or are accused of crimes. So understanding the legal system from the criminal component helps you become a better advocate on the immigration component. So find ways that you can combine your experience and present that and package it to your employer in a way that sets you out from the competition. Again, going back to the main idea that this is all subjective and it's all competition. So intern for a few offices in law school, graduated, studied the summer of 12 for the bar, took the bar exam. After the bar exam, I got what's called a post bar. Post bar, if you heard of one, is basically it's an internship after the bar exam. Highly recommended. Highly recommended that you get a post bar. Again, is it fatal if you don't? It's not. But it is definitely recommended and a leg up on the competition if you do get one. Cal Western is really good at getting you employed and getting you connected with internships. Cal Western has a very good reputation locally. Admittedly, they're not well known outside of San Diego or outside of California, but in this region in Southern California and up and down the state, they are very well known. So we are very well connected, the alumni are, with folks up and down California. So we have a good network base of folks that we can tap into for internships. And a post bar is essentially a process that you start your third year before graduation. Don't wait until you graduate or after you graduate or after you take the bar to look for one. Get that process knocked out before, so that once you graduate, you start studying for the bar, you take the bar, you have a job waiting for you after the fact. So that's something to look at during your third year. I'm going to say something about internships, slipped my mind. But so far, any questions? Post bars, internships?
I don't know if you know this, but maybe from like a hiring perspective, is there a difference between an internship and just say like a part-time job where you're doing like one specific role and you maybe don't have like a mentor the way an intern would?
Now, is that part-time job possibly like in the legal field, like in
Yeah.
the law office?
Yeah.
So there could be a few differences. Unfortunately, internships are generally not paid. Very few are, but for the most part, let's assume it's not paid. However, there is the possibility of getting credit. So there is that possibility of having an internship with the law school, and at least Cal Western, I can't speak for the other two law schools, but at least at Cal Western, you will get credit, or you could get credit for that internship. Number one. Number two, depending on the part-time job, you may not get the legal experience that you need. If you want to go into litigation, you're probably not going to be litigating in that part-time job. It's probably going to be more administrative than that. So it'll pay the bills, it'll keep you at least in the law office and in the setting that you might want to work in ultimately. But be cognizant of the fact that it might not be preparing you for that next step or giving you the tools. So I would be mindful of that. I'm not gonna say it can't be done, but in most cases, think about it this way: an employer will not pay you to do legal work unless you're an attorney or a post-bar. So if you're an intern in law school, they're very reluctant to pay you for the work that you need and that you want to do to ultimately land a job. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So be mindful of those things. Good. Any other questions? Internships, post-bar, networking. Networking is huge. Networking is huge. If you are, believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I'm naturally shy. I don't like to be in front of people. I don't like crowds. But I'm a trial attorney, so I do it because it's my job. It's a craft. But it's not something that I'm naturally in tune to. So even if you aren't, I really recommend that you put yourself out there. Go with a friend. Go to networking events. There's endless amount of causes and groups and networking opportunities in law school. But the reason I emphasize it so much is because the legal field is such a socially driven job. And you might say, well, so is, the medical field, or so is another industry. True, possibly, but the legal field is really socially driven. I mean, we can pick up the phone and say, hey, I met Mia at this event. What do you think about her? Well, I think X, Y, and Z. I have this other applicant. What do you think about this person? Well, kind of a professional. They showed up late, sloppy. I wouldn't recommend them. Go with Mia. Done. If the applicants are pretty much on par on paper on all the qualifications, a simple phone call will break the tie. I've seen it before, I've heard it before, and I've been part of those conversations, so I know what happens. So be mindful of that. Don't disregard the networking off the bat. And kind of stepping back for us from the trees here, I truly believe that those who succeed in the legal field are those who are inclined or willing to put themselves in uncomfortable positions. Push yourself to the limits, grow, learn, become advocates, because that's what you're going to do. And you might think, well, I teach evidence at one of the law schools, and I tell my students, look, you may not want to litigate in the future. You may want to be a transactional lawyer. That's fine. But one day, your employer might say, hey, I need you to go argue this motion. And if you say, I don't know how, or I don't want to, that's going to severely impact your career. And it's going to go to somebody else who is going to get the job done, and who is going to get the promotion, and who is going to move on to bigger and better opportunities. So the point I'm making is, even though it may not be on your radar, do not decline these opportunities. This is professional growth. Embrace it. Go for it. Because you never know what kind of opportunities may arise from these encounters, or these situations in which something lands on your lap and you just go for it and you ride it out. So do not shy away from these obstacles. Do not shy away from opportunities. Embrace them is my is my philosophy. Networking, what else? Any questions so far? Yes.
I think you mentioned things about internships when you're in law school. How would you, or do you have any advice on like undergrad internships, like right now, like what should we be doing in order to like set ourselves up for in the future?
So if you're so inclined, depending on whether you're junior, senior, sophomore, start looking up whatever, well, first of all, do you know where you want to go to law school? I guess is my first question.
California for sure, San Diego preferably, but Cal Western is definitely up there. USD, yeah.
So before I answer your question, let me actually ask or give you another piece of advice. Try to go to law school if you can, wherever you ultimately want to practice. Right? That's a big thing. I've seen a lot of cases, a lot of unfortunate situations where people come to study in California, they go back to Michigan or Washington or Texas, and their whole network, their whole base is here in Southern California, and it's hard for them to land a job where they're from. So again, it's not fatal. They still made it through. They landed careers and passed the bar in their respective states. But again, it's about chances. It's about the odds. It's about putting yourself in the most strategically advantageous position in the long run. Okay, what can you do now? I do recommend that you get involved at this level if you can. I'll give you one case in point. I mentor a lot of young law students and undergrad students who are pursuing or in law school at the moment. And I have mentored individuals who started attending and networking during the undergrad period. And it put them at least 2 or 3 years ahead of their competition when they finally were in law school. So much so that when they were in law school, other attorneys and judges literally thought they were already lawyers. And they were surprised to hear, no, I'm a 2L. Like I started last year because they had been around so much and people knew, and that name recognition goes a long way. So look up legal organizations here in San Diego. The San Diego County Bar Association is our umbrella organization for San Diego County. And under the umbrella organization, there's a lot of other affinity bar groups under the San Diego County Bar. I'm the president of the San Diego La Raza Lawyers Association. There's Earl B. Gilliam. There's, I think, 15, 20 more other organizations under the San Diego County Bar. Find something that interests you. Find something that you think you might find somebody to connect with, and just attend some of these events. You don't have to attend all of them, but attend 1 or 2 and get to know people. Trust me, that connection is going to go a long way. And the attorneys who attend these events, by far 9 out of 10, they want to help other people. They want to help law students. They want to help undergrad students get to where they need to be. So you're going to find a lot of folks who are willing to take on maybe somebody part-time basis and offer them some sort of legal position. But those are the things that really set you out, that a lot of other folks kind of expect things to fall in their lap. So if you do things like that, taking tours at the law schools, to get the names out or get your name out and follow up. Whenever you do get a business card from somebody, whether it's the dean, whether it's an attorney, whether it's somebody you may not even want to work with in the future, a network is a network. It's another lawyer you didn't know yesterday. Follow up with them. Send them an email. Hey, thanks for chatting with me at this event on November 25th over on Market Street. I appreciate your advice. If you ever have time, I'd like to meet you for coffee. I'd like to meet you for lunch, if you want to take it that far. Because we see that. We hand out our business cards all the time. And out of maybe 50 that we hand out on a weekly basis, maybe less than 5 actually follow up. And those are the go-getters that stand out in our mind. Those are the people that we remember, okay, they took the initiative, that they're serious about this. In my own experience, I've had so many people who tell me they want to go to law school. I'm sure you've had people in your life as well, or you will have at some point. And out of all those individuals who tell me they want to go to law school, I can probably count on one hand those who actually took the steps and applied, got in and graduated law school. So all this to say, stand out. Stand out from your peers, stand out from the competition, because ultimately we're all watching. And again, it is very, very socially driven, for better or for worse. I'm not saying academics don't count. I'm not saying working hard doesn't count, professionalism, those things. What I'm saying is those things being even and on par, usually the social dynamic is what tips the scale in your direction or not. Good question. Any other questions?
So you mentioned you work in the Deputy District Attorney's Office for San Diego. With like the dual court system of like how the US works, what kind of overlap or intersection do you have with federal courts, if any?
I work hand in hand with the US Attorney's Office, especially in my unit. Not all units have that opportunity, but because of the narcotics nexus that we have, we work hand in hand with federal agencies, FBI, DEA, HSI, and I'm in constant contact with the US Attorney's Office on different cases. Sometimes we swap cases. Sometimes there are cases that they're interested in that I have that I've investigated in, and they'll call me up and they'll say, "Hey, I heard from so and so that you have this case. We're interested. You know, what are your thoughts?" Go back and forth. This is what I got. Here are the issues. Here are the weaknesses. What can you do on your side? Because there's different parameters and whatnot, considerations that they have that we don't. So we'll send cases over there. Vice versa. We have tools under the evidence code that don't exist, that there are no federal counterparts to. So there are reasons why even a federal case will come to us in major narcotics, because we have different mechanisms and procedures that they don't have. One of them is, for instance, confidential informants. They don't have the procedures that we have to preclude discovery of confidential information. Because, to take a step back, normally all the discovery that we have, the DA's office, we have to turn over to the defense. We can't hide the ball. We're not allowed to keep the cards concealed. We have to literally lay out our cards on the table and put everything out there. It's our job. But if laying out our card puts somebody in danger or somebody's life at risk, we can conceal that card. So long as we're not depriving them of a fair trial and we're not concealing what's called exculpatory evidence, right? Those are the two limitations. They don't have that on the Fed side. They have to put everything on there regardless of who it affects. So yes, we work hand in hand with the federal agencies in enforcing and investigating the cases. I personally have been to the execution of some search warrants. We had a deal go down. Anybody know the Costco Alpha Market? Few heads. So there's a Costco Alpha Market, and we had been exchanging messages with this guy who was rumored to be a big fentanyl dealer. So we arranged to buy some pills, some M30 pills, some fentanyl pills from him at the Costco Market. We did a buy. I think we bought like 10,000 pills from him. So he was good for it. And then we set him up on a second buy, this time to buy, I think it was about 30,000 pills. And the kicker was he was the driver of an armored car vehicle. So he was using his armored car, his company car, to transport, sell the fentanyl pills. So in any event, we set up this buy. Our office in the HSI, we set up the buy at the Costco, and as soon as he pulls up, HSI swarms his car, and we take him down. We arrest him. He had a box full of pills in the passenger seat of his car. Execute a search warrant for his locker at work and found another 10,000 pills inside his locker room. So we do things like that. Yeah, and there's a bunch of other ongoing stuff that I can get into right now, but it's depending on what you like and what you're interested in, you can be as hands-on and proactive as you like, or you can be more on the reactive side. Reactive means a crime already happens and it comes to your desk and you have to decide what to do. And that's maybe 80%, 90% of the cases in our office. A crime has already been committed. So what do you do with this case? Can you prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt? And that's one of the primary reasons why I became a DA, is because you have the opportunity to seek justice at the forefront. You have the opportunity to exercise your discretion right there in that moment. It's your decision whether or not to file charges. Of course, there are constitutional parameters and there are legal issues to consider along the way in making that choice. But ultimately, that choice is yours. So if you decide to use your discretion and give somebody a second chance, a defense attorney can't do that. A judge can't do that. This is strictly a function of a deputy DA and your discretion. So it's a big responsibility, and it's not one that should be taken lightly, but it's also an opportunity for you to really effectuate justice, again, on the front end, as opposed to a reaction on the back end. No shade on defense attorneys or judges. They play a very important role in our system, but again, you have the opportunity at the forefront to really make a change in somebody's life or help out a victim. Good question. Any other questions?
Is it better to get your master's after undergrad or just go straight to law school?
So that's a good question. And a friend of mine did that. He got his master's in, I want to say CJ. I think he got a criminal justice master's because he was going the law enforcement route. So he was already, I think, a year in when I met him. Then I changed his mind and now he went to Cal Western. And now he's an associate at Jackson Lewis in downtown San Diego. Making a little bit more money than I. It depends on what your timeline is. It depends on a lot of things, right? It's famous last words of an attorney. It depends. Do you have a job waiting for you? Are you in a rush to get through law school? Do you have a family? Or do you have kids to take care of? Cal Western has a 2-year program. I think they still do, right? They have a fast track. So back then they had a 2-year program. I think they still have it. They also have a 4-year program. So people would ask me, which one do I do, the 2 or the 4? Well, how much of in a hurry are you? Like if you have, let's say your parents are partners at a law firm and you have a job waiting for you at the door, okay, do it in 2 years. Internships are not a concern for you because you have a job. You have an offer waiting for you at graduation. So why delay? Why prolong it? Just go for it. So it really does depend on where you want to go and how fast you want to get there. Now, practically speaking, does having a master's help you in some sort of way? I don't necessarily think that it does. Having a master's, I think that it might soften the blow of graduate work because now you're accustomed a little bit to kind of a higher level of academic rigor. But is it going to help you maybe in writing, depending on the major, depending on the emphasis in the graduate program? But overall speaking, I don't think it's going to specifically help you in the practice of law or getting through law school. Unless there's a specific identifiable reason why you would want to get a master's, then maybe. But other than that, I wouldn't. Cal Western also had a joint program with San Diego State where it was a dual JD MBA program. So I don't know if that's still around, but like if you're doing something like that, right, that's a very specific, identifiable kind of a niche area. So that'd be something to consider. Do you have one in mind? Is it like a specific program?
I was just wondering, because I know a lot of people that get their masters and some don't. I was just like, or like, is it better or is it the same?
There's no noticeable difference for me
Okay.
in talking to people and in identifying a way that it helped them in some way in either studying or essay examination, some sort of tangible benefit. I can't see one, to be honest. There's also economics, right? The financial component, right? It's going to add another, what, 15, 20,000 to your bill. So think about that. Are you going to go into public work or private? Because if you go into public, you have private loan or public loan forgiveness. But if you go into private, you're paying that loan back yourself. So you're looking at, not to scare anybody here, but you're looking at, 15, maybe $2,000 a month paying back your loan on the lower end. And this is not including your house payment, mortgage, rent, if you have a family, things of that nature. So other things to keep in mind is you're going to be adding to your bill if you decide to go the graduate route. Cost benefit.
Working in government, what's your work-life balance like?
So I fortunately, at this point in my career, there's a lot of discretion for me personally. I got to leave today at about 3:15, 3:30 to be here. The first 5 years of being an attorney, the learning curve is not too steep, it's manageable. You still have a personal life, obviously, but your first 5 years, you are adapting to a lot. After your first 5 years and the learning curve is more or less manageable, then you have much more flexibility and your reputation as well by your superiors. They're gonna entrust you a lot more. And it's especially valuable for a deputy DA because you have a lot of responsibility on your hands when it comes to these cases. So you want your superiors to not question your decision if you dismiss a case. If you decide to give somebody a misdemeanor when they were looking at a 20-year felony. So work-life balance is manageable. I think where it gets difficult is when you have other responsibilities. Like I'm also an adjunct professor and the president of this organization. That throws off my work-life balance. But like everything, it's a learning curve, right? Once you plateau, at least me personally, I will add something new and learn some new skill or acquire some new position, and then learning curve goes up again, right? Everything else kind of stays manageable for the most part, but your learning curve should always be changing, in my opinion. So it is easier, it is manageable. We don't have billables like the private world does, but that's a double-edged sword. Because with billables, let's say your billables are 2,500 a year, give or take. You have an identifiable objective by December. In government work, you may not have billables, but you don't have that, like, when are you finished? Right, you can't say, okay, I've reached my 10K, it's July, I can take some time off. You're just kind of always on the grind, right? There is no benchmark to meet to let you know you can take your foot off the gas a little bit. So we may not have billables, but there are really clear lines of when you should take your foot off the gas and relax a little bit. You learn to adapt to that, obviously, with time. But I think that's one side of not having billables is people think it's an advantage, but to some extent it's a disadvantage.
I
Sure.
have
No,
I have
guys.
plenty of
Go ahead,
questions I
go
can
ahead.
keep throwing at you.
Lay 'em out.
This is kind of like, I have a kind of like a compound question about like just like the operations of the district office. How do you get cases? Like, do you just like walk into your office and see a new case file on your desk? Like, or how does that process kind of work?
Yeah.
And two, do they assign specific cases to specific prosecutors within your department based on like specific experiences and specific types of cases? Or is it like everyone in the narcotics department is able to handle every single case that comes
Sure,
through?
no, great question.
And
So,
you like trade back and forth with each other?
yeah, no, great question. So day to day, what does that look like? So let's step into the general channels. A general channel case is prosecuted what's called horizontally. And it's horizontal because at every stage of the process, a different prosecutor is touching that case. You have one prosecutor for the arraignment, another prosecutor for the negotiations part, another prosecutor for the preliminary hearing, and then another prosecutor for the trial, and then somebody else for sentencing. So that's called horizontal prosecution because it's like a supply chain of folks touching this case. Vertical prosecution is a lot more focused and specialized to this specific unit, major narcotics, the gang unit, domestic violence, family protection unit, fraud. Those are vertical cases because they're a lot more sensitive. The investigations might be a lot more complex or need a specialized mind. The same prosecutor handles it at every single stage of the game, reviewing the case, arraignment, negotiations, prelim, and so forth, all the way to sentencing. So that's in a kind of a nutshell, that's the difference between vertical and horizontal prosecution. The way we get our cases is once somebody reports a crime, the police investigate the crime, they document reports, take photographs, the whole nine, and they submit their cases to our office. Our staff processes these cases and they basically go to a supervisor and say, hey, we have these 15 cases that came in, whatever they may be, theft, DUI, assaults, you divvy them out. You assign them out to who you think on your team. So they're divvied out to folks on the team, and there is some consideration as to who should get what in terms of experience. We're not going to give a homicide or a serious sexual assault case to somebody who's brand new, first year, second year in the office. So there is some consideration, but at the same time, we do like to challenge our folks, and we do push people in the deep end. I'm going back to internships just real quickly. Interns get to litigate in our office. They get to appear in court, and they get to argue motions and direct witnesses on the stand in our office. So we definitely like to put people in the deep end and have them learn in real time. Obviously give them feedback afterwards, but we're big on hands-on. So you're actually certified by the state bar to appear in courts. And so long as you're appearing supervised by an attorney, you can argue, do a trial, you can not do whatever you want, but you can appear as if you were a standard attorney. So we get the case, it's investigated, we review then. At that point, we review whether or not we can prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt and what charges we can't prove. We go into our computer system, we type in the charges. We type in a quick summary of the case so that if somebody remotely from another location wants to look up our case, there's a quick synopsis of what the case is about. And any kind of unique issues with the case and kind of flags, it'll be in that synopsis. And then that process I just described generates what's called a complaint. The complaint is the charging document. That's the document that's filed in court. That's the accusatory document that says so-and-so is being charged with 5 counts of fraud or 1 count of homicide. So all the charges and allegations are in this charging document. That person is arraigned and they plead not guilty in 90% of the cases. The standard move. In a vertical assignment, we negotiate the cases. Like this morning, I had 3 cases on calendar. One of them was about an individual who smuggled 72 kilograms of methamphetamine. Another had 20 kilograms, and the other had a few ounces of methamphetamine, heroin, and a few other things, guns, I think, as well. So we negotiate those cases. I go into chambers with the judge and their attorney, and I say, Judge, here's the offer. I want this count, and here's the sentence that I'm requesting. And then you have to justify that. Say, well, Mr. Prosecutor, why are you asking for this sentence? Why are you asking for 8 years as opposed to 5 years, as opposed to probation? Well, Judge, here's why. This person had 72 kilograms of methamphetamine. This person has 3, 4, 5 other similar convictions in the past 5 years. They've been to prison before for the same conduct. And, you know, this is an appropriate sanction in our opinion. And then you go back and forth. Defense might say, well, look, can't do 5. Can you do 3? Well, how about the middle? Let's do 4. And you decide on what the appropriate resolution is. So again, that's your discretion. You can do that. If a case does not resolve, then you take what's called, you take it to what's called the preliminary examination. And that's a quick snapshot of the case. That's where you present some witnesses and you have the witnesses testify to the judge as to what happened in the case. And the judge decides if there's enough evidence to move forward to trial. 95% of the times there is going to be enough evidence. It's a very low standard. It's not that hard to meet. But some cases are questionable, and that's where that's decided. If a case survives what's called prelim, it's bound over or the defendant is held to answer, then it goes on to the trial stage. And that's where you put on the big show. That's where you put on all your witnesses, you put on your lab analysts, fingerprint, DNA, ballistics, the whole 9, right? You don't hold back. At prelim, you don't have to do that. It's not necessary. But trial, you want to do that as a prosecutor. And if there's a conviction, sentencing at that point.
Mhm.
But in a nutshell, that's what the life of a case is and what a day-to-day in our office looks like. For the most part, you are in court. I spent today got to the office around 7:30 today, and I left around 3:30. So in those 8 hours, I think I spent, kid you not, like 6 in court. 6 in court. Most of that was litigating or negotiating in the morning. And then I went back in the afternoon for a couple of other cases. Some of that was waiting around in the courtroom for my case to be called. You're at the mercy of the judge and the court's calendar. Some court calendars are very congested, some of them are a little bit quicker. So even though the litigation component is a big part of our job, so is waiting around, unfortunately. So it eats up a lot of your day. You get another question. Did I answer it?
It was kind of a more like funny kind of question, but like, do prosecutors switch cases sometimes, like trade?
You know what? We don't trade as in like trading baseball cards, but if there's a conflict, they're called kites. We kite cases to each other.
Okay.
You and I are on the same team. And let's say I'm in trial tomorrow, Thursday. I'm in trial this whole week and I have another trial tomorrow. I might come to you at lunch and say, hey, look, we're not finishing this trial. I have to cut you my case. And it's not uncommon for you to review my whole case, prepare a full trial overnight, and be ready to present my case tomorrow. Wow. Yeah. It's not uncommon. I've had kites on, small misdemeanor cases, and I have had felony kites as well. So again, it's one of those things that, going back to what I said earlier, you don't want to be the person to shy away from challenges. I'm not saying you're not going to stay up all night and preparing that trial, but you don't want to be the person known, I can't go to him for kites. Like, he's not a team player, she's not a team player, like they're not gonna, it just looks bad on you. There are probation periods, there are annual reviews, they're actually 18-month reviews. So, that stuff could be taken into consideration. There are promotions. Your level 1 to level 2, level 2 to level 3, they're all automatic. As long as you don't burn the house down, you're gonna get promoted. Level 3 to 4 and 4 to 5, those are competitive. So that's where those things come into consideration. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, that we don't necessarily trade cases, but it is not uncommon to kite a case to somebody if there is a legitimate conflict. We've had, not on kiting, but we've actually had one case or one individual who apparently was known to call off sick during his probation period. And this is recording, huh? And let's say he didn't pass probation. And the reason why is because somebody saw this person surfing when they were supposed to be sick. So it's an extreme example. It's one that I've ever heard in the years that I've been there. But again, people make those decisions.
It's probably weird and like me being paranoid, but
Sure.
do you ever think there's like a safety risk associated with like the line of work that you do?
Yeah, I ran backgrounds on everybody before I got here. I'm kidding. I am kidding. No, there is. My detectives, my agents, they've gotten threatened. They've been, like, we have gotten word from our confidential informants of different things and like plans to commit some crimes against the detectives that I work with. So I personally have to take a lot of precautions coming to and from work. Daily routines, where I go, when you work in this field long enough, you're gonna see the same venue pop up, the same restaurant or the same bar pop up in many of your cases. Like when I worked in Chula Vista, there's a few spots on 3rd Avenue. You guys know downtown Chula Vista? There's a few spots that would pop up in a lot of my cases. So I'm like, I can't go there. Like, I'm gonna run into somebody and something's gonna happen. And I accuse people as a job. So when I go in, because I have the evidence, I feel confident, I go in and I accuse people and I don't hold back. So if I ever run into them or their loved ones, it could go south really easily. So it is risky, but if you're intelligent, if you're strategic, if you're just mindful and you're aware of your surroundings, which we should all be anyways, you can mitigate anything serious like that happening. And there are other precautions you can take as well. Good question. Yes. Oh, I thought I saw a hand. Any other questions? Yes.
Kind of like relating to that, do you ever have like the mother, say of like a loved one that you,
Yeah.
had to go to jail, do you ever have someone come up to you, and then like, how do you handle that situation if it's like them, crying to you?
Well, I'm mindful of that as well, because it's a very emotional response. Oftentimes it is not a response that is surprising, and is not a response based on the facts. It's just a mother pleading for her child, daughter, son, a sister, a significant other. So you do, or you should, and I think this applies to any line of work or any field of law, exercise some empathy and understand what they're going through and really put yourself in their shoes. And as a prosecutor, especially understand that there are two sides to the coin. There is the victim side, but there is somebody on the other end who's impacted by your decisions. And reconcile those two things in your own mind and your own heart, and be content that you're doing that. I've seen a majority, I think 9 out of 10 DV victims in my experience recant, want to withdraw charges, refuse to cooperate. I had a victim in trial who was convicted of contempt of court. Because as the jury is sitting here to my left, I have her on the stand, she refuses to answer any questions about the incident. Mind you, he broke her eye socket, her cheekbone, and her jawbone. And she was still out there supporting him. So a lot of it is psychological trauma. A lot of it is from that as well. So there are legal mechanisms to handle something like that, and just be prepared to handle a cooperative witness with a non-cooperative witness. You're never going to change somebody's mind. I had another case in 2018 where these two brothers, they were older, they were like in their 60s, and they got mad at each other during this silly argument. Well, one of the brothers went to his shed and retrieved a shotgun, and he pointed the shotgun at the door to the entrance of the kitchen, and the other brother was on the other side. And I guess he was taunting him, like he's not going to shoot, and the brother shot him in the face and killed him. Mom was obviously distraught, and she wanted her son, the defendant, to be released from jail, even though he had just killed her other son. So you deal with a lot of real raw dynamics like that. And you do have to be okay, obviously. You have to have you have to stomach these things and have thick skin, because you don't get a lot of fans being a prosecutor. You do have a lot of folks who are in the audience, and they give you the side eye. And again, just be mindful of who's around you, and when you walk out, who's walking with you. But personally, I think that I'm doing a service to even them, that they may not realize it, no matter the consequence, because it is my job not to get a stat or get a conviction or get a prison sentence. My job literally as a prosecutor, and it's the only job description aside from any other attorneys in any other jobs, is to effectuate justice, whatever that may be. So sometimes justice is dismissing a case. Sometimes justice is a drug program, rehabilitation, probation. Sometimes it's prison, right? And we get to decide that collectively for the most part as a group. So you will upset some people along the way, but by this point I've handled enough cases, and I've helped, I think, a lot of people, even defendants along the way, to where that's how I reconcile kind of my beliefs is I've done good. It hasn't always been about throwing people into jail and locking up and throwing away the key. You do have tools to effectuate some change in people's lives, whether they want that change or whether they want the opportunity. I mean, it's up to them. I can't tell you how many times, unfortunately, I offer somebody rehab who I think has a problem, and they're like, "No, I'd rather go to jail. It's easier." I kid you not. Rather go to jail. But I can't do anything about that. So yeah, that's how I deal with it. What about online?
No, we've been good so far.
Okay. Okay,
Maybe like one more to be mindful of time, but.
sure. Don't be shy. Now is not the day to be shy, folks.
Good. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you for
so
coming.
much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'll have some business cards if you guys want to stay in touch. Happy to help answer any questions about the law school process, about the legal community at large, staying involved, or even different career paths, whether it's the DA's office or not, even defense side. Happy to be a resource. So good luck.
Thank you so much.